and it's 9 o'clock, so you know what that means. It is time for the Nitty Gritty Science Teacher Workshop. Thank you so much for joining me on this Tuesday evening. Can you believe it is August 1st? I don't know where the summer went, but we're here, folks. We are getting ready for back to school. And just with a little bit of housekeeping, as you may or may not know, the annual back to school sale is going on right now, where all Nitty Gritty Science products are 25% off. So make sure you head over to my store on Teachers Pay Teachers, or you can go to nittygrittyscience.com and use the promo code BTS for back to school 2017. Now, as we scroll through this today, I'm having Dan help me tonight, and he'll be calling out your questions and letting me know when there are questions out there. Again, we like to keep this as a workshop forum. So if you see questions on there from other people and other teachers that you can answer, jump on board, and your ideas are just as well received. I love hearing what everybody has to say, sharing your thoughts, because I don't have all the answers either, and there's so many different ways that you could do these teaching and the different styles and strategies. So please feel free to just jump on board and let's get this conversation rolling. Okay? So, as you know, tonight we are doing the topic, the 5E model. I'm going to take this 5E model, and as I spoke to you for the last couple of weeks, a lot of questions I get is about a pacing guide and how do you teach the curriculum and the Nitty Gritty Science curriculum, this 5E model, and I'm asked a lot for pacing guide. And a pacing guide is generally set up for the entire school year or the semester, and it goes day one, etc. And we joke because I have, over the dozen years that I've taught, on day one when I start with the pacing guide, never once have I ever finished on the exact same day that the pacing guide finishes. So what we want to do is say, how can I look at this curriculum and follow it so I don't have crosses in my book and shifting and arrows and highlight and move things around. So over the years, what have worked for me is I've come up more with a pattern. So I want to discuss that more later in the workshop when we get into that. But first, we're going to focus on the 5E model. So before we get started, I just want to know if you could just give me a shout out, just say, hey, where are you from? So I know we have people coming in and that this feed is going out and you can hear me okay. So, Dan, are we getting people no problem with issues? Fantastic. Thumbs up there. Okay, so we already have a question coming in. If I don't, let's just talk about the questions there. I'm going to try to answer as many questions as I can in this teacher workshop because I want to get that information to you. If I miss any of your questions and it just scrolls through, I always go back and I try to answer the questions after the workshop. Okay, so first question, why don't we just go with that and then see where that leads us. Dan, what's the question?
Okay, Tanya's just asking, I get the IMB now, but want the 5E curriculum at a later date. Is it broken down so this is possible, since I noticed that the entire curriculum has the IMB?
Okay, so talking about the IMB and the curriculum, when I go through all the curriculum, every single section that I'm going to go over can all be purchased as separate bundles. So the interactive notebook is the bundle, the editable resources is a bundle, so if you don't want to buy the whole complete course all at once, you can break all that up into bundles. And again, I'll break that down more when we get into this. So let's just start with the 5E model. And I know you may or may not have the background. I'm going to start with kind of a simplified explanation of the 5E model, where we're coming from, and then if you have questions right now on the 5E model, let's go ahead and throw those up right now so we stay on task, and then we'll move on when we start saying how we're going to implement the Nitty Gritty Science curriculum with the 5E model, okay? Now the 5E model has been since the late 1980s. Professor Roger Bybee and his team did this, and they put this together when they were doing a study, and the study was, I always call it the BSCS because that's where it is, but it's the Biological Science Curriculum Study, and they came up with this 5E model. And over years, people have added to the different E's, but I'm going to go and stick with the original model for this workshop purposes, and you can go back and look at the 5E model and see the different variations people add on the end, okay? So, here we got the 5E model, and these are our 5 E's, of course. We have engage, explain, explore, elaborate, and evaluate. And the 5E model is used to help get the students to start with the topic, engage them with the topic, and then as we go through the different parts of the 5E model, by the end, when they are evaluated, you are going to be able to see that they have mastered that concept. That is the number one goal of the 5E model, is for concept mastery. Now, when we look at this, a lot of times when the 5E model is going through, when teachers think of it, what I've found in the past is they are thinking it more as a one-way direction. You have to do the engage, you have to go and explain, to explore, to elaborate, and to evaluate. And if you don't fit in all those sections, then you're going to wonder, well, where was the mastery concept at the end? And that is not how this model is set up. It doesn't have to just go in a one-directional pattern. Many times you can take and start with the engage and go with the explain, and then you can explore, and you can always come back to the explain part. You can be down and elaborate and find you may need to go back to the explain part. You may find in between the explore, you may want to add another engagement piece in there to hook those students because we're maybe shifting into that concept. So we want to think more of the model as a circular model. I can come back to a piece and I can keep hitting all these. So during the unit, as long as there's all these components put into the unit, and I can repeat the elaborate, I can repeat the explain, I can evaluate a few times, and I do that in mine when we talk about the mini quizzes and then the final chapter test at the end. That can all be put in there. So that is where the 5E model works when we put it into a unit. So, any questions right now on the 5E model? Fantastic. So, what some people say is, okay, I'm doing the 5E model, and this is a big question. So, this is, which one do I do first? Some people say more, hey, we're going to engage the student and then we're going to come back and explore before I explain, because they want the kids to get excited. They want them to kind of delve right into the topic, do some hands-on things. And that is some people's prerogative. For what I've found in the past with my students, I like to give them a little bit of explanation first on the topic, and then I'm going to let them explore, so that way they can touch base. We start using science vocabulary, and we start getting the thought process on that concept before we explore. So I got a question coming in right now. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, should you always start with engage?
Yes. Okay, that is a big one, and I do feel you have to start with engage, because what this engagement component is doing, and we're going to, oh, my marker. This engagement is going to excite them. Okay? And the engage part is you want to hook the students on the concept. This is not really a bell ringer. That would not be what engagement is. Engagement is, I'm starting a brand new topic. I want to get the kids excited about the topic. I want to show them a demo. And it doesn't always have to be something exploding and something catching on fire. It has to be something that they see a phenomena happen, and that makes them think, why did that happen? How did that happen? And you get that discussion going. They don't have to have the answer at the end of this demo once you engage them, because by the end, at the end of the mastery concept, they are going to understand what happened back at that demo. You can go back to that. So the engagement is the piece to hook the students, and it makes them kind of put the last chapter behind them. We're moving on to this next one, and let's get them excited about this new topic. Okay? Any more questions, Dan, on that?
Okay, yeah, Jennifer's just asking, when doing engage, do you let students know if they're on the right track or have the wrong idea? Or do you tell them to wait and let them know they will find out as the unit progresses?
I would start the conversation, and it depends on the question that they're asking. If you see some misconceptions that start coming up within the demo that the kids have, for example, if you're talking about matter, and they start thinking electricity is matter, and fire is matter, and those kind of things. Those are misconceptions that you want to start having the discussion about during the demo, and just explaining why that is not matter, and those are more energy and that kind of thing. But if it's something that you feel like, you know what, I think you're going to find out the answer to that later when they start asking the question, and you know it's coming up to help them, let them kind of be perplexed about it and let them think, how did that happen? So you're going to have to kind of choose as an educator what is a misconception and what is just a, man, I have to know the answer to this. Tell me what happened. And that's where you're going to hook them, and you know that you got their curiosity piqued, and now I can start moving through the unit. Okay? So what we do with this model, I told you the number one goal of the 5E model is to go ahead and get that concept mastery. But there are other goals by using this model, and another goal is using the nature of science and having students learn the nature of science. So you want to start putting in that scientific process in throughout your units, and you want them, another goal is to start having them use inquiry skills and scientific inquiry skills. Are they observing? Are they communicating? Are they analyzing data? Are they collecting data? All these inquiry skills should be components in this 5E model, because we want them thinking and acting and being scientists. And just to sit at our desks and just fill out worksheets all the time is really doing injustice to our students, because this is not how the real world works and when they're out doing science. And a lot of times now we can get real world data coming in, and there's a lot of different projects out there. But we need to get them started, and before we can get to that level, finding what do they do with the data they collect? How do we analyze data? And this is what you're going to do as a teacher when you start putting all this curriculum together. Okay? Another goal is with this 5E model is actually we're going to develop teamwork. Okay, amongst your students, you're going to have the groups working together. Our students are social creatures, and you see it, we see it. They're communicating all the time through the social media. They're talking in the room. Use that to your advantage when you put them in their lab groups, when you put them in their scientific, or you put them in their interactive notebook groups, and you have them work together. You keep them on track, and you keep them within this model and what we're doing. You're going to find a lot of discussions happening using scientific terms, using scientific vocabulary, discussing, is that right, is that not right, why didn't that work, that kind of thing. Now, I'm not going to say they're all going to walk around and just being all scholarly all the time. You're going to get your side things. They're students, right? But for the most part, when you start getting them into the swing of things and we start saying, hey, you got 20 minutes for this interactive notebook activity, let's get on it. You're going to see focus. Let's go, guys. How am I putting this together? What are you doing? How are you going to put your model together? What did you guys get with that calculation? You're going to see that collaboration piece. So that's another great component and a goal of the 5E model. And then, of course, the last goal of the 5E model is we want the kids interested in science. We want them to love science, and we want them to get excited about science. So by using this and plugging in the right components for a unit, you're going to go ahead and get them excited about science. And I want to share with you how you can use that nitty-gritty science curriculum to go ahead and do all those goals. We want to show how you can go ahead and excite students. You can show how the teamwork is there. We can show how they're going to collaborate and use science inquiry skills. We're going to see how they get excited about science, have fun in science, and then finally, you are going to see the concept mastery at the end. Now, what I have done is I'm going to have Dan send out a link on Facebook right now, and I'm going to go over this pattern that I've been just talking about, and we can go ahead and discuss that. Is there any questions coming in, Dan, before I move on to this next part?
No, so the link is at the beginning.
Okay.
And then,
he already added the link for the pacing guide,
yep.
So go ahead and click on that.
Someone's just asking, does Engage have to include a phenomenon? And then they're asking if you have a sample interactive notebook, you can show us how to use the 5E model.
I'm going to show the 5E model. The interactive notebook is going to be a component of the 5E model, so I'm going to break all that down for you right now because that's part of the curriculum that I use as the 5E model. The Engage part, you do kind of want to always think about showing a phenomena. Sometimes maybe you're showing a video clip, but you don't kind of give them the answer to it. So it doesn't have to be a demo of materials or something. But like I said, it's not just something where the students are just doing like a mini quiz. That's not an engagement piece, or they're just doing a writing down and they're just answering a yes or no, true or false kind of thing. It has to be something to get their brains thinking about, why did this happen? How did this happen? Okay, and we want them to start getting engaged. Now, going back to what Dan just said, he went ahead and put the link to these pacing guides, these suggested pacing guides. So go ahead and download those. And you also have them now if you have already bought the complete courses. I've already added those, so if you re-download, you're going to have access to these. And I want to just go ahead and I'm going to put a larger version right here so I can go over it with you. And you're going to see how I have done this is really based on the Nitty Gritty Science curriculum. And I have based it around the Science Interactive notebooks. And each Science Interactive notebooks in the table of contents is generally going to have 4 sections, or they're going to have 5 sections of notes, or they're going to have 6 sections of notes. So that's how I have broken down all the pacing guides. You can see I've based it on a 4-section chapter, a 5-section chapter on the second page, and a 6-section chapter. That's a little tongue twister. And when you go ahead and look at this is what I want to go over with you right now. You're going to see the 4-section chapter when we start those interactive notebooks and we break it down. It's going to span across 10 days. So we don't have to go ahead and start putting our pacing guide on August 5th and then move down the road. You just know that if it's a 4-section, it's probably going to run about 10 days. So if you want to plug in projects in there, if you have to plug in a field trip, if a snow day comes in, it's not going to throw off your whole calendar. You can just kind of plan with this pattern. So why don't we go ahead and I'll ask on questions again, Dan, and if there's no questions, let's go into this 5E model and how we can use it for the Nitty Gritty Science curriculum. Okay? So if I'm going to start on a 4-section chapter, I want to see right here, these are our 5 categories: engage, explain, explore, elaborate, and evaluate. And as you can see, if I just take one chapter, so let's talk about, I'll just show here, astronomy and space science. Okay, there's your interactive notebook. What I'm going to do on the first day, on day 1, I'm going to do a teacher demo, and you're going to find those teacher demos in my demos and labs and science station packets. Now, as the science teacher workshops go on, I will be going ahead and we'll be addressing individual chapters, and we can discuss all those demos and labs more in depth and how those happen and all that. But I'm not going into that right now at this time. I'm just going to go ahead and explain the 5E model with the curriculum. So where you're going to find is you're going to do a teacher demo, and that is going to go ahead and get that engagement piece I was just telling you about that we're going to do for the 5E model. Then you're going to go ahead and do your section 1 notes. Now, I'm going to preface this right now. We have talked about in my Q's and A's and my last workshops, there are different styles on how to do those notes. I highly suggest, if you want to see the variations of the notes, go back and look at the last workshop where we talked about the different variation of notes you can give the students, because in the curriculum you can edit the notes, you can make them fill in the blank, or you can make them more guided notes. And then that way, what you do is you want to give the notes to the students ahead of time. And I like to use the guided notes where I have the vocab word and I take out the definitions, and the students need to go fill out the definitions, label the diagrams that are in there, use their color, and we have that. They get that done ahead of time. So that way when they come into the class, we're going to have the section notes ready to go. So that way when I go ahead and use the PowerPoint to teach that section 1 notes, they have them done. So they're listening to me lecture, and I can explain it, and I can discuss the topic, excuse me, and I can go ahead and use that PowerPoint to teach. So that way if they miss something when they were doing the notes on their own, they can now fill it in, and they can ask me questions, and we can have discussion, and they're not just sitting there the entire time scrambling to write down slide for slide and not listening to me talk about what's going on. So then, after that PowerPoint, because I have the notes broken up by sections, as you can see here, again, we have this. I'm going to excuse myself for a sip of water. Okay, I've chunked the notes for you. So here are some notes. And so what the kids would have done is fill this out ahead of time. So when you're going over the PowerPoint, they're going to do this. And you can see there's a next section of notes and that activity, so we're going to get onto that on day 2. So this is what we're focusing on day 1 right now, is doing the notes and doing the activity. Now I got a question coming in. Go ahead, Dan.
Yep, Denise just asking, do they use textbooks to find the definitions, or do you provide them something to find the terms definitions?
I have used the classroom textbooks. The textbooks are generally where I've worked in 6 different states. I'm a Navy wife, and usually when I get there, I only have a classroom set of textbooks. So I do let the kids work in the room, use the textbooks, and they go ahead and fill out the notes that way, using the textbooks to fill it in. If you don't have access to textbooks, maybe use the internet. But really, a lot of the topics you'll find, you can find all this information in the textbooks, and you would know what would be in the textbook. So if there's something that you know it's not in there, you can fill that in with the PowerPoint later. Another question coming in.
And then just for the ahead of time, does that mean for homework or in class?
So where this would be, I'm going to have them do it. I'm going to show you way at the end. It may take a couple chapters to get the kids into the pattern, right? But what is going to generally happen when the kids take the chapter test at the end, the first one is probably going to have to do for homework. You might have to give them extra time in the first chapter, the first week. It's always kind of wonky with the schedules to get going. But what I always do is, you can see there's a couple pages of notes. There's usually 4 or 5 pages of notes, whatever, how many sections there are on there. When the students finish up the chapter test, they're going to quietly come up, hand in the test. There's still other kids walking around or working on the chapter test. They're going to walk over, get a textbook, and you're already going to have the notes sitting out there ready for them to complete. The students will be able to complete those notes using the textbook quietly until the rest of the period is done, because one, we're chunking the notes, we're making it so it's not super overwhelming to them. They're guided, or they're fill in the blank, however you work it for your student, and that way they have the class time to do it, and they can finish it right there. And then when everybody has turned in their tests, I say go ahead, work with each other, work on those notes and fill them in. What is going to go wrong? They are talking science, looking at the notes. I'm going to go over and discuss this already. They're just taking that information out of the notes. So that was how the pattern will end up being. And if you keep following the pattern, by chapters 3 and 4, you're not even going to have to explain anymore. You're just going to say, remember, when you're done with the test, turn it in. They're going to already know. They turn it in, they pick up their next set of notes for the next chapter, go get a textbook quietly and start working, right? And you're going to find they're just going to sit down, they're just going to start working, and they're going to start realizing what the format of the notes is, so it's going to get faster and faster for them every single time. Any more questions on that, Dan? Okay, fantastic. So now I'm going to go ahead and have the section 1 notes. I'm going to go along with the PowerPoint. You can see it's only one section, so it's not going to take that long to go over the PowerPoint. And then I'm going to have them work on the IMB activity. This is going to probably take the rest of the period. Anything that's not done in class is going to be done for homework. But just let them know. Set that timer up on display so they can see how much time is left in class. Generally, you're going to have probably about 20-25 minutes left in class, and you're going to go ahead and say, let's get this done. This is your time. And I tell the students, last time workshop, I was telling, whatever my science lab groups are, those are the same for my groups for my science interactive notebooks. So I have them work in their lab tables, and they each have the bin of the interactive notebook materials. If you missed that, you can still catch that workshop and get some more ideas on the science interactive notebooks, and that's over on my TPT store. So just look for the Nitty Gritty Science teacher workshops, okay? So again, right now, I've engaged, I've explained, we've explored by doing this part of the activity. They're taking the notes I just taught them, and they're going to go ahead and use what they know on the notes that we just worked on, and they're going to build something. Here they're making a model of the solar system, okay? They're going to have to kind of figure out what order the planets go in, and then I'm making them do some calculations on the distance from the sun. This is exploring. They're doing a hands-on model, and it's a scale model of the solar system, and they're just going to put that back in. We're going to go back and explore, and then the next day they come in. It's including in the Science Interactive Notebook. I'm going to do a very quick evaluation, which by giving them that mini quiz in the morning, or what I should say right when they return to class, okay? So I'm going to give them that mini quiz, going to do a check. Are they understanding what they just learned on that topic 1? Awesome, that's going to take just a few minutes. we're going to start again on the Section 2 notes, doing the exact same thing. Section 2 notes, I'm going to explain it with the PowerPoint, and I'm going to do the interactive notebook activity. But again, that might have been I build a solar system model. The next day, they're going to do the notes again, but now we're going to do the formation of the solar system. I'm going to look at it from this, and it's going to be more logical. They're going to have to read, they're going to have to match with the pictures. And they're going to start knowing, the next day they're going to come in and they're going to do a shuttle sequence mission. So you can see the students are not going to have a repeat interactive notebook activity ever. They're always original for the same set of notes. So even though they are sticking in the pattern and it's the PowerPoint notes, explain the information, and they're doing an interactive notebook activity, their brain is always going to be on a new thing, whether it's working with a model, whether they're doing a pattern for logical thinkers, whether they're writing a poem. They're always going to be doing something a little different, so their brain is staying engaged and they're making whatever on this side, they have to interact with their notes on this side. So they are putting all the pieces together. I'm going to go ahead and take, we have a couple questions come in, so I'm going to take a couple right now. Go ahead.
Yep, so real quick, just clarify what guided notes are, and then
Sure.
second one is classroom tables. Do you set them up in groups of 4? And then I'll give you a third one once you get those two.
Okay, so let's do that one first. The guided notes, this is the notes come like this, already pre-printed. Everything is there. Students should go ahead and not just be given the information verbatim. They should be able to go ahead and look for the information, fill it in. So what I've given in the course is the notes, and they're editable, so that way you can go ahead and take out the pieces. So they're guided because I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give them the vocab words I want them to find the definition for. I'm going to go ahead and say they started building, and I'm going to leave blanks. They started building the International Space Station. They're going to start filling that information in. So I'm going to kind of give them the outline, which are the guided notes, and then I want the students to go find the information to fill that in. Now you can make it, if you have students, or if you have an IEP, or if you have like 4th, 5th grade students, or if you have an IEP or that kind, you can make it just more fill in the blank for them. And that's another way you can vary the notes, okay? The second question, again, Dan, I'm sorry, was?
Classroom tables, how many groups of 4?
It all depends on what you want to do for group size. I've generally had 6 lab groups going on, so it's like, and I have lab tables in the back, but you generally probably 4 or 5 people in a group works really well, I think. So that would work if you have desks as your lab table. That would be fantastic. Mm-hmm.
And then just speaking to Nitty Gritty and the NGSS standards, how closely do they align?
The Next Generation Science Standards, the Nitty Gritty curriculum is aligned to the middle school Next Generation Science Standards. However, they can be adapted to the high school, and they do meet the 5th grades, but the entire course, like the entire life science course, you probably don't need for a 5th grade class or something like that, because you only do certain sections. So all the chapters can be purchased individually, but they are aligned to the Next Generation Science Standards.
Class period time, what's this designed for? 50 minutes, 70 minutes?
All of this right now, this pacing guide is set for a 50-minute period. And as I said, I should put a big asterisk. This is a suggested pacing guide. Everybody has different class sizes, and some do block scheduling. This is all based on a 50-minute, so you're going to have to adapt if this doesn't work for you a little bit. But you can kind of see the outline, how I run this and how it works. So by the time I've done section 1 and 2 of notes, we've now hit those explain pieces, and we've explored a little bit. Now we want the kids to really delve into that explore piece. So we're going to go ahead, have them come in the next period on day 3, give them that mini quiz that we just talked about for the section 2 notes, and then we're going to go into a guided inquiry lab, and you're going to find that with my demos, labs, and science stations. So this is going to be where they get into their lab groups. They're going to have to go collect the materials. We're going to go and collect the data. They're going to do the investigation. They're going to answer the problem, and they're going to go work on that. So that's going to take the rest of the lab period where we hit that explore piece. One question coming in. Go ahead.
Would the first day of notes be different than the day 2 based on when you give them notes?
The notes, I'm not sure about that question. If you could just clarify that question for me, that would help. The notes are, as you can see, are each section. So on section 1, that's day 1 notes. Section 2 is going to be day 2 notes. And when you go to each chapter is broken into sections. So like I said on the pacing guide, if an interactive notebook, where this is going to be the base information, where you're going to get that explained part, if there are 5 sections to the chapter, you're going to use the 5-section pacing guide. If you have 4 sections, 6 sections. So I think that's what you're trying to ask right there.
And then just a couple questions on, for 5th grade, do you suggest purchasing chapter by chapter? And then some question, integrated science, would you recommend purchasing in pieces? Like what they
For
need?
integrated science, yes, because right now I do have it set up by discipline. My whole course curriculums go by just earth science, physical science, and life science. So for more integrated curriculum, you are going to have to go ahead and get them chapter by chapter. Currently, I do not have just the entire units put together, but the best way to do that, and I will get that eventually, it's just not, I just didn't get it ready in time. But what you can do is go to my store on Teachers Pay Teachers, and right in the top right-hand corner, there's a search bar that says Search Store. So let's say you need plate tectonics. Just type in plate tectonics, and everything that I have for plate tectonics that goes along with this course, and it will follow the 5E model, will all show up, all that, all the resources I have for that, and you can go ahead and add those to your cart. But for 5th grade, follow your standards, and you would need to go chapter by chapter. Same with the integrated courses.
And then Tanya's the same one that asked about the notes. She
Sure.
just came back to since students would need time to do the notes. My question would be when they would be doing day 1, like what kind of notes. Just the timing on the notes. I think that's what she might be asking.
Okay, so if you start at the beginning of the school year, you might just want to set out a day to get the kids on track, how to do the notes. This is where the textbooks are, and get them situated and started. So you're going to probably want to set aside that time to do the notes, because it's going to have to get the kids into the groove of how to do the notes. Where I was saying before, once you start doing the notes and you start going through everything, on the last day after the chapter test, you're going to start having them rotate into that next section in the next chapter of notes. So on day 1, on this day, you're going to give them all pages of notes all at once, because you can see it's less than a page when you break it down, and they just fill in that information. So they can fill in those pages all at once, and they will get very quick at it. It just might take a first couple chapters to get them on point. This is where you find the information, using the textbook, getting familiar with it. But they will eventually start getting it. So give them the notes all at once, have them paste them into their interactive notebooks on the page numbers that you have assigned for those notes. So that way, when they're ready and you want to explain the notes and do the PowerPoint, they're ready to go. All their notes are already pasted in. Now I'm going to explain it. We're going to do the PowerPoint. You're going to go ahead and do that interactive notebook activity for it. When we get to that next section of the chapter, same thing. The notes are done. They're completed. So now, guys, I'm going to explain it to you. Let's go over the PowerPoint, and I'm going to do my lecture on that and explain that topic. Then we're going to do the IMB activity. Day 3, we're going to give the interactive notebook activities a rest. We're going to do the guided inquiry lab. Then we're going to go to day 4. We're going to go back to our notes, and we're going to go ahead and finish how many sections of notes that you have left by doing the PowerPoint and doing the IMB activities. So by this time, everything should be explained to them, and they should have all the notes on the topics, and they've done already a little bit, and they've interacted with their notes, and they have got more of a feel for the concepts, and they've been able to practice and apply their notes because they've done those interactive notebook activities. Now we want to get to, we're at that part where we have engaged, explained, explored. Now we need to elaborate. And this is where you need to see have the students elaborate. The elaborate in the 5E model is not that you need to elaborate more to them, like let's go into this deeper. This is actually the students need to elaborate more on what they learned to you. They need to show you, all right, you gave me all this information, now let me show you how I can use it and how I can apply it. So we have those science stations. And the science stations are broken up into 7 different stations. Information where they're going to read an article, and it's not just a science fact article, it's going to be something that's a real world, relevant, something engaging for them, and they're going to say, oh, this is where this fits. I have here on the information station, the phenomena of the big crack, and this is kind of where the sulfur is located in this national park, and a diver can go down and touch these 2 continental plates when I'm talking about plate tectonics. so they can kind of see where those two continental plates are and where they are in relation to each other. And then after they read it, they're going to go ahead and answer some questions. So I'm going to just have them do some reading comprehension with that, and I want to know that they understand the material, because now we're giving them the real world applications of that information that they've been taught. For the observation station, which is the next station, they're going to go ahead and they're always going to get 3 different images. It could be a diagram, it can be a labeled model, it can be just a picture, and they have to explain to me what they're seeing and how this relates. There's always a couple questions that go along with each image, and they need to answer those. And I have answer sheets, and I'll get to that in a second. The third is now investigation station. This is again going to be a quick investigation. They have the materials, and they're going to go ahead and solve a problem. The problem is always up at the top, and they're going to have to go and collect the data, collect the information, sketch what they see in the microscope, etc. But right now, the kids have now gotten 2 different labs, a much more guided inquiry lab on day 3, and we're doing another lab here when we're doing the elaborate on the science stations on day 6 and 7. Okay? Calculation station, the students need to understand that science and math go hand in hand. And this is where we're going to start putting those cross-cutting concepts from the next generation science together. So they're going to always have to do graphs and data, calculating, applying the formulas, and that's going to be where this part comes in with the calculation station. The communication station, again, I want those students to elaborate, and I want them to use that science vocabulary when they are talking about this topic. Okay, I have a word wall up that's also included in your complete course package. I want them using those vocab terms that they have been just staring at for the last 6 or 7 days. I want them, if I go ahead, if I ask them compare and contrast divergent, convergent, and transform plate boundaries, I want them to explain that to me in their own words. I want to see that they understand what they've been learning these last few days. Again, I have some questions, and I have the kids either set this up in interview style, and we have a lot of fun with this. They can record themselves on the camera, and we can go back and look at those later. Answers are included with that. Creation station. This one kids always love. Get a little messy on this one. It's going to be more of your STEM child. We're putting that engineering cross-cutting piece in from the next generation science standards. We're going to reconstruct the continents. Maybe we're going to be building tire tread when we're talking about friction. Maybe we're going to be building models, and we're going to be building contraptions with certain materials, those kind of things. And this one always goes because they're going to test these against each other's lab groups. So this one that kids always have a great time with. Do you have any questions coming in, Dan?
Yeah, just
Can we stop for questions real quick?
Yeah, just do a couple of them. Someone just said they bought all the things. Just wondering about the pacing calendar for bundles. Do we have one? Where is it? Where they can get
That's
one?
what I'm talking about.
Yep.
It's included in your bundle right now. Go ahead if you are not seeing it. And the link, Dan just put the link as the first comment in the top of this whole live thread. Go ahead and click on that, and they'll take you to the pacing guide, which is what we are discussing right now.
Okay, and then do students, just technique, do students listen to lecture if they aren't taking notes?
Absolutely, because the PowerPoint in the lecture is not going to last an hour. I have chunked the notes, and the kids are going to be seeing the PowerPoint up there while you are discussing it and seeing if it matches up with the notes, what they had. And this is where you can ask questions. What do you have? Have that discussion start. Let them know this is not shut your mouth, I'm talking to you. Start the conversation of science, and it doesn't need to go off on these huge tangents. Just get them knowing what is going on with the topic, so no worries on that.
And then do you allow students to use IMB when taking quizzes and chapter tests?
No, because the mini quizzes are only 5 to 10 questions, and they relate right back to the interactive notebook activity or the notes that we just did. So what I'm doing is I'm just checking these real quick. I'm using it for a check for understanding on the mini quizzes. Chapter tests, no either, because by the end of this, again, this whole 5E model, by doing all the explanation, the labs, we've done all these stations, we have task cards coming up, I'll tell you about that. The kids are going to know this information. You're going to see that, and they won't need the interactive notebooks for the chapter tests, so no.
And then someone was just asking about where are the inquiry labs, and then another question on the, these are designed for 50 minutes, is that what it is? And then how long does a creation station usually take?
Okay, so they are designed for a 50-minute lab. That's what it is right now. The guided inquiry labs are located in my demos, labs, and science station bundles. And the creation station where we're doing this is they build and they create and they do their models within the station, the 20 minutes. But I reserve time out after the science stations are done to have the students do the testing against each other or to have somebody judge the models, that kind of thing. So that is done outside. So the building and the designing, that happens in the science station during that time. Another question, Dan?
Yep, yeah, just on the product. Just asking, is the individual chapter the same material in the bundle? And
yes.
Yeah.
Yep, everything in the chapter is going to be what's in the bundle. So what you're going to find is like when you hit plate tectonics and it shows up on my store, you're going to get the plate tectonics interactive notebook, plate tectonics demos, labs, and science station, plate tectonics task cards, plate tectonics editable resources, which include the notes, the PowerPoints, and the science or the chapter tests, and then the plate tectonics everything. I think I hit them all actually. So they're all in there, all yes, individual. That is exactly what is included in the complete course bundle.
And then just someone, how can students fill in notes if the school doesn't use textbooks? Would you have them write as you lecture, or what would you do?
If you don't use textbooks, you could do it a couple ways. If they have access to laptops or that kind of thing, then they can go ahead and look at the information that way. A lot of times now you can get the textbooks online. You can go and look online and you can find textbooks online that you can set up and just show the kids, this is the link I want you on, and they can scroll through pages. So that is definitely out there. If worse comes to worse, then absolutely. While you're having the PowerPoint, go up there, have them fill out the notes, and then that way you might want to give them time to fill out the notes. It will move a little bit slower, but if you don't have textbooks, that will be the way you need to go. Good on the questions?
Yeah, does this relate with Stemscopes and the text?
I am not sure what Stemscopes is. I'll have to look into that. I'm not familiar with the Stemscopes. And once I look into that, I'll be able to come back and answer your question. How about that? Okay? All right, fantastic. Just finishing up, we had one last station, which this is Imagination Station, and that's just really a fun one that the kids do at the end, where they're just going to be doing that. But I wanted to show you this on the answer key for each one on the science stations. There is an icon at the top of each answer. So these are going to be the answer pages. The icon matches up with the station. So again, I'm going to help you set up that organization in your classroom. So if the students are answering here, they know that they are at observation station. They know here, information station, it's going to be right there. So you can see the icon matches with I have it both showing in the camera, right with the station. So they shouldn't have any trouble. Where do I put my answers? Where am I at? And they just rotate around, okay? So that again is just more for a class management piece that I wanted to share that was in there. So we've just done the 2 days of science stations, all right? Question coming in real quick.
Real quick, on the science stations, how do the kids end at the same time? How do you work the timing on that?
So you're going to have the kids probably rotate around. If you find that some are moving faster than the other, this is again going to be have to something that you work as a teacher. If you want to have 2 sets of stations going, sometimes teachers do that. So that way if one station is filled over here and this group is ready, they can set it up and finish it over here. But generally you're going to find kind of setting up a timer and just saying rotate through the stations, and then if they need extra time at the end, just say, hey, you know what, you can go back and finish that station if you need to, or just see where everybody else in the groups are on track, and you can just say, we're going to give an additional 2 minutes to this station, that kind of thing. So it's going to be kind of one of those management things that you do as a teacher.
And then how many times a week for science stations do you recommend?
So the science stations, again, if I have these days and you're following the pacing guide, it's going to be 2 days of science stations. So you're probably going to have them set up, and it's probably you probably have class every other day, right? So you're probably going to have the science station set up so that way the classes every other day get it. So during one chapter that you're working on, you're going to have the students work on science stations just 2 days out of that entire unit that you're working on. So then, I hope that answered your question. Now, when you finish the science stations, we've finished all the interactive notebook activities, we've done the guided inquiry lab, now we're on day 8. This is where I set up that extra time where we're going to do that testing for our creation station. We're going to go drop and launch our egg-stronauts that we've just made. We're going to go ahead and test the contraption that we just made. And then we're going to go ahead and get the task card review on day 9. This is where we're going to set up some kind of like Jeopardy style game with the task cards. We're going to do the review. If you want, you can have them work in groups, you can have them work on pairs, but there's generally about 30 to 40 task cards per chapter, and then the students can go ahead and work on those. And now we're going to start reviewing all that information again. Okay? And then finally on day 10, they're going to do the final evaluation, which is the chapter test, where we were just at. During that chapter test, we have 2 things happening. If you knew about the Science Interactive Notebooks, when we did that workshop, the students are all going to come in before the chapter test and they're going to lay their interactive notebooks up on your desk. They're going to stack them up. You're going to hand out the tests. They're going to be working on those. While they're doing that, remember how we graded the interactive notebook activity? We put stickers up at the top if they completed them. So I'm going to be flipping through while they're taking their tests, and they got 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. 4 out of 4 stickers. Close it up. Put it in my grade book. We're good. Next student. So by the time they're doing the tests, I've just graded their interactive notebooks for this chapter by just doing a quick sticker count in the upper corner. If you missed that tip, go back and check out the Science Interactive Notebook workshop. Okay, that will be really beneficial to you. The other thing is that you have the notes out there set up, remember, because now when they're done with this chapter, let's say we're done with plate tectonics and we're moving on to forces that shape the Earth next. The forces that shape the Earth next, those notes are going to be sitting there ready for them, and they're going to go ahead and quietly lay down their tests. They're done, pick up the notes, go get a textbook, return to the desk, and they're going to finish those notes. So when they come in the next class time, we're going to start all over again with getting that engagement piece. We're going to wow them with our demo, and then we're going to move on through the chapter. Okay? Do we have any questions coming in, Jim?
Yeah, they're just talking about it and expanding the information by using video. You know, an example they gave was like the Spatial Launch or something. Would you do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All of that stuff can be put in, and that is what I'm trying to get across with this pattern. So if you see something that comes in real quick, again, I'm not going to mess up my whole planner, because in this pattern, in this day 10, if you want to plug something in, fantastic. Throw it in there, add those pieces, add the project, add the video, add those, and then just know we're going to come right back on track and finish up with the pattern. And then that way, you just start again with the entire pacing guide. Should be more like a pacing pattern, really, and just start that all over again, because things come up. Snow days come up, assemblies come up, and we don't want to just have a day-to-day calendar set up from now until December, because it's not going to work. So follow this pattern. Okay? Another question.
Yeah, so the integrated model, they're just using certain sections. Will students still have enough information to complete all the stations? Yeah. If they're only using certain sections from chapters?
Oh, yes, because when you do the stations, you can go ahead. Oh, I see what you're saying. If you're only pulling out certain sections, hold on again. What you're going to have to do as a teacher is when you go look at those stations, you might have to see that maybe, even though there's 7 stations, maybe only 4 apply if you're just taking out a couple sections out of those chapters. So you're going to have to look at those ahead of time. Excuse me. This happened to me earlier too. I've been talking all day. Okay. Any other questions, Dan?
Yeah, and then if you just want to go over how they could get that chart and all that stuff, and the link is in there.
Oh, again, yep. So to get the charts, and this is just one example. This one is based on the 4-section chapter. In the top thread, or the top comment of this thread, the link has already been put in there, and you can find the pacing guide for a 4 or a 5 or a 6-section chapter that you're going to be working on. If you have already bought the Earth Science, Life Science, or Physical Science courses, any of those complete courses, those pacing guides have already been added, so you might want to go back and re-download those so you have those as well. But it's the same thing. So if you get it from this link, it's the exact same thing, so you don't have to go re-download. Another question?
Yes, so Denise was just asking if I buy the units instead of a bundle in order to get everything, I need to purchase an interactive notebook, demo, task cards, editable notes. Is there anything else? I think they just want to know total thing.
I think you got it. Interactive notebooks, demos, lab science stations, the editable resources, which is the notes, the PowerPoints, the chapter tests, and the task cards. And then the only thing that is not split up by chapter at this time are the word walls. I just have the physical science word walls, the earth science word walls, and the life science word walls. And the word walls here, 2 to a page, and you can see they have a large word. They're all color-coded by chapter, so that way you know where they are. A nice large word and always a visual that go along with that. So those are all by bundles, but everything else is definitely individual. Another question coming in, Dan? Okay, so I hope you have found this useful. I hope you can see at the end with the curriculum, by the end the students are hitting that goal with the mastery of the concept. I know your students are going to have a huge interest in science when we're giving them a guided inquiry lab. We're giving them another hands-on lab in the investigation station. They're doing all those different activities for the interactive notebooks, so that way they're not just a book of notes. They're engaging with our notes, and we're doing models and puzzles and those kind of pieces on the interactive notebook side. And then we have that creation station where we're having them think outside the box and problem solve and use that STEM piece, so that way they're using those engineering and cross-cutting concepts with the next generation science standards. So right there we've hit on that the students are interested in the science. Everything starts, my first chapter is Nature of Science, so that hits the goal, and we're going to keep using that Nature of Science throughout the year, throughout the course, and we're having the kids work together all the time, so that communication and that teamwork piece is there. So we have definitely been successful if we go through this and use the course on following that 5E model. And remember, we want to start thinking that it doesn't go in a one direction model. This is kind of a circular one, and we can come back and redo it as long as all those pieces and all those components get hit throughout the unit. Okay, any other questions before we close out for the night?
Yeah, just Emily asking, how does this relate to like specific Texas standards?
Texas standards I do have in my store. I don't have the link, I'll put it up later, but there, if you go search my store, I do have everything aligned to the TEKS as well. So I have the next generation science standards, and on the same document in my store there, it's all aligned to the TEKS. So you're going to be able to find all those chapters that are aligned. So that you got you covered for the Texas standards.
Word wall words, do they have definitions? Where they?
No, the word wall words do not have definitions, and the reason I don't put the definitions up is because I want these words to stay up on the wall. I want the kids to get used to seeing the words and getting the visual, because they're going to start learning these terms, and that way they can use these as a visual cue as I'm learning them. I see the word, so that way in the communication station, when maybe they need to put their thoughts together, convergent boundary. Oh, she asked me, maybe if I looked up at that word wall and I saw that word convergent boundary and I saw an image, that's going to bring back a whole slew of ideas and the whole lecture that the teacher was talking about, and it's just going to be that little click. I needed that light bulb just to help me. That's right, convergent boundary. Because I want to keep these up throughout the year, and I don't want the kids using them as cheat sheets with the definitions on the card. These are also great if you have ESL students, because these large words with the visual also help them put the visual to the words while they're learning all those scientific concepts as well and those scientific terms. Okay. Any other questions coming in?
Do you have to hide the words during tests or anything?
No need. The word is just up there and there's no answers. It's just an image. So if my student were to see that this reminded them of just genetic disorder, that is not an answer. If that helped them just kind of click their brain over and just remember what genetic disorder is, more power to them. That's fantastic. Because I'm not giving them an answer here. They just saw this little picture and that just clicked on all the information that was up here that I just taught them during that thing. That is concept mastery. That is what you are wanting them to know. So that's fantastic. Nope, keep those words up. Okay? So great. Finishing up, I just want to say thank you all so much for joining us on this Nitty Gritty Science workshop. I will go ahead and put out an announcement when we're doing the next the next workshop, the Science Teacher Workshop. I will go back, if I missed any of your questions, I'll go back and answer those. If you, some of you are collecting the certificates for doing the professional development, I will go ahead and have that certificate up for you on my Teachers Pay Teachers store. Just search the Nitty Gritty Science Teacher Workshop, and then this video will be there so you can review it along with the handouts that we talked about. You can download them there, and I will also have a certificate for you too. Don't forget, again, it's the back to school sale happening today and tomorrow. Everything in my store is 25% off, including all the complete courses that we just talked about now, and you can do that at Teachers Pay Teachers and Nitty Gritty Science, as well as nittygrittyscience.com. It was wonderful having you again this week. It's fantastic, and we will talk soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.